Hey everybody, Chloe Lewis here, founder of the Marma J Foundation, doing a pretty late stream. It's like 8:30 p.m. here, pretty busy day. And I have a user interview with AVB I'm excited for, but that's in about an hour and a half at 10. So, gonna be a short one. Yesterday's video I was talking through was quite a long video, kind of just talking through the Decision Neuroscience PhD program. So, like the last sentence here, I'm planning on pursuing a PhD in decision neuroscience at Temple University Fox School of Business. I'm working on the application now. The deadline is December 15th. And so I kind of worked on like the first half of the paper so far. I mean, this is very, very rough. I'm going to go back in and kind of edit some of this, but this is kind of the intro to the question is like, what are my goals and motivations for taking the PhD program, and what are my general areas of interest? So the first part is I'll just read through it honestly, and so eventually this will be a blog on the Marma J blog once I'm done with it. But for now, just work in Google Docs. So a doctorate degree can mean many things to many different people. To me, it dictates that an individual has taken a considerable amount of time and effort to research, study, and apply their knowledge in a specific academic field. While pursuing a doctoral degree is not the only way to support a certain field of research, which obviously is clear. I mean, there's so many people in the crypto space specifically, but all over the different areas of specific research that don't have degrees at all. It does provide an individual, such as myself, with a structured environment with which to grow as an academic within their own area of interest, as well as support other academics as they pursue their own research interests. So for me, it's quite important that I've been researching on my own for quite a while, and it's not always the simplest or the most efficient way to support others. It's pretty efficient to support myself many times, but I'd like to expand beyond that if possible. So this ability to efficiently support a wider community while also supporting my own goals as a researcher is my main motivation for pursuing a PhD in decision neuroscience at Temple University Fox School of Business. So that's like my main motivation. Over the past 4 years, since completing my master's degree and my master's in sports psychology, I have mostly been focusing on my personal research goals, which is basically the ideas of social support, being able to social support or perceive social support, being able to, be efficient for injury prevention and rehabilitation. That was specifically for sport, but I do feel as though that's definitely a true statement beyond just the field of sport. Or, I think anybody is supported by, even perceived social support. So, well, I've traversed many different areas of interest since then. So getting into the crypto space has brought me through areas of economics, psychology, governance, cryptography, computer science, consensus, and many other areas. To be honest, you touch on almost anything. And now I'm the adoption of the Near Foundation, and that just brings me over even more, working within communities and different types of communities, different marginalized. So it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of different stuff. And so I think a PhD program would hone that in a little bit. Over the past, so my main goals have become much more focused on the application of my research. So yes, I've been doing all these wonderful things on a personal level, but like the Marma J Foundation has been the encapsulation of all of these different research areas to kind of be hands-on, more applied within a community. So specifically, the idea is to support communities comprised of traditionally marginalized individuals. So self-identified, we're not going to go label who's marginalized, but the idea is if someone feels as though they're a traditionally marginalized individual, the idea is how can we support those people to feel like they have a higher level of perceived social support, and we do this through the Marma J DAO. My goal at the completion of this degree and upon receipt of my PhD would be to have contributed to the field of decentralized governance specifically by attempting to answer the question of, and this is kind of, I'm going to obviously rework this many times before I even hopefully start my PhD, but this is kind of the idea, the question I'd like to work at solving. So how to use decentralized governance, so DAOs, to efficiently collaborate and come to consensus transparently and securely to support the long-term sustainability of a community and its members. And I think that every single community will be a little bit different, and that's why I think this question is not one that I can just answer quickly, or even if I do, answer it efficiently for the Marma J Foundation, there's infinite other communities that already exist or could come about that might need a different answer to this question. So then I go into a bit of the history of what that means, because I mean, if no one's heard of DAO before and they have no clue what DAO is, once you get to about like here, like what I want to do, you're like, okay, this makes no sense. So I did want to give a kind of a brief overview of like what it means to me. So ever since the inception of the DAO, where individuals were able to invest funds towards an autonomous purpose using a decentralized platform to organize, so obviously this was on Ethereum, in April of 2016, it has been clear that DAOs pose an interesting solution to a long-standing issue within the field of governance in general. So in my opinion, the idea that so many people were willing to put their funds into this this vault or this community treasury, because in my opinion, they felt as though this was going to support the longevity of the community that they're in. So it was on Ethereum, so everyone wanted to kind of support the Ethereum community. They're like, okay, well, if we put our funds in, we can vote, we can collaborate securely and safely, and this will drive this pool of funds to support the community. Now, I think at one point it was like 4% of all Ethereum in this DAO before it got hacked. So it was, a large part of the imagine 4% of the world's population agreeing to join any collaborative entity with it. That's quite wild and pretty cool in my opinion. So it shows that it's an issue here. People thought it was worth putting their money in to solve it. And so in my opinion, the issue is the ability to raise funds in a decentralized way to support the purpose, goals of a community. Now that needs to be reworked. That's very low level, and I probably need to work at that in its own that's probably going to be its own paragraph. Anyways, and then ever since the DAO hack in June of the same year, where a third of the funds in the DAO's treasury were lost due to a security vulnerability of a reentrancy attack in the code, and it resulted in $50 million US worth of assets being lost. So obviously, a lot of people were willing to put their funds in. $150 million were in the DAO, but a third of the funds were lost, and they ended up forking the chain and giving people their funds back, and it was a whole debacle. So in my opinion, the DAO hack made it very clear that while DAOs are and were an interesting primitive within the field of governance and decentralization, there was and is still a lot more research needed to ensure that individuals and their funds, of course, are also safe as they attempt to come to a consensus to support a community that they're attempting to govern. So, once I flesh out these ideas a bit more, then, do I use capital? Not really. Marma J DAO. So the whole idea then is, these are my ideas. I think I want to answer the question of how DAOs can support, what are DAOs, and then the second half of this is going to be what have I been doing with the Marma J DAO, and what is the purpose of it? How is the Marma J DAO going to support this research over the next decade, multiple decades, hopefully? And so that's where, for example, we have a token to provide I can't even spell today. It's been a long day. I love autocorrect. So we have a token to support to provide economic support. We have a DAO for transparency, accountability, and obviously, when we're talking about security, the idea is there's so a DAO factory. Oops. So the idea of a DAO factory for multiple iterations. So the idea is that, there's no, in my opinion, there's no one size fits all solution for any type of governance. And so, but many times, multiple communities, multiple counties, multiple states, countries try and use similar types of governance, and they don't iterate through them very quickly. So the idea of having a DAO factory, or a factory, a smart contract that has some sort of very relatively safe audited code, and then it can churn out multiple iterations of a DAO for a community, and then that community can expand upon their code base, for example, in a in a secure way, iterating, over time. And then that, because it's all open source, and so the idea of it being OS to for like additional support of the wider community. And also for security. So the idea is if the original code base has been audited by, instead of being audited by one company that's planning to use the code base, if it's a DAO factory, there might be hundreds of communities that end up using the code base. So for example, right now we look at Sputnik DAO V1 stats. Instead of it just being like one Sputnik DAO V1, there's 207 of them. So they each get to iterate over different use cases of the DAO, different funding mechanisms, different off-chain management systems. But we've already gone over this many times. Sputnik DAO V1, you can look at your DAO, create a new proposal, and it's very limiting on what you can actually do. Sputnik DAO V2 all of a sudden gives us the ability to add a new proposal, have a custom function, and we can call whatever we want. So some of the most recent calls in the Marma DAO, let me zoom in a little bit because I'm like way zoomed out. So some of the most recent calls are, trying to farm on Berry Club. So for example, all you have to do is, send, we have to actually send 0 gas. So that's why it's not working. But the idea is, we can try and farm some Berry Club. So actually here it is. This is just the sending of cucumber tokens. So 1 Yocto. But as I iterate over this code, so I sent most of these transactions, it's all open source. So if I make mistakes, people know what mistakes not to make anymore. And if I do things well, like there's been some really cool, I think my favorite one here is we did, it's way to the bottom actually. There you go. Marma DAO minting memberships of 10 NFTs. So I came in with the DAO. I proposed that we should go on the Marma Mint Day store and we should mint some tokens, and we minted a bunch of them. So now anyone can come onto the DAO, see this transaction, copy right there, and send the same transaction on their DAO, to their own Mint Day store, and they could do it a little more securely knowing that someone's already tried it. So that's how the community can work together to, everything's open source, it supports the wider community, and there's additional security. So obviously, if my, thesis is that, or my master's thesis, like the even perceived social support can be supported towards the community and help a community out. The idea is that even the idea that knowing that, when Sputnik, when Astro launches, it's going to be a really smooth user interface for interacting with DAOs on Near. The idea is that if you know that there's going to be hundreds of other communities that are going to work through this with you, you might be more willing to experiment with it, put more funds in. More people might be more willing to jump on board and start, doing bounties for proposals to build out Sputnik DAO. And that's the idea there. So that's just like some of the tools the Marma DAO has currently. We use our token definitely for economic support. And in that way, like, DeFi, plus, payout proposals. So not only do we have the token trading on Ref on multiple pairs, so we can earn, trading fees and whatnot, we also submit payout proposals, and that's a whole thing. I mean, the reason we do that is so that we can provide payouts without extending out, layer 1 security. So for example, if we give someone 10 Near tokens, and they just lose them or burn them, because Near is a proof of stake network, the more tokens that are spent staking on the network, the more secure the network is. So long term, the Marma Foundation wants to keep most of its Near tokens staking. But the idea would be that we can still give out Marma tokens. They can have some sort of value in the treasury or perceived value in the treasury, which could support the community that we have. So that's the idea, to kind of expand on what the Marma DAO has. It also has a community. In my opinion, that the beauty of that is you have multiple people to support you, to watch your back, to provide input and suggestions. So it's not just me sitting here, leading everything. I say I'm founder of the Marma Foundation, but the Marma DAO, the purpose is to truly be decentralized at a certain point in time. So to help with uh, implementing DAO's purpose in an autonomous way. So the idea is the Marma J DAO has the purpose of managing the Marma J Foundation's assets for now, keeping it very simple, very high level. A lot of that is managing the assets that are in DeFi. So that's the goal, is that right now the marmaj.near account's doing it. We want the DAO to be able to do that. And also managing payouts. There's been many times already actually where I've been busy or not there, or one of the council members has been busy. And for example, because we need 2 out of 3 to pass, we can actually, still conduct things even if I'm away. So if I disappear and I go away somewhere, the council can still come together and conduct payments. But the issue here is, like, what if Bianca and I disappear one day? Then the funds are locked. And so the idea is, how do we actually ensure that this purpose is autonomous? So, implementing a rage quit function potentially in an idea where we set some alternate address, maybe, governed by the Near Foundation for now, just keep things very cyclical, being like, okay, well, if no payouts, if the funds stay stagnant for more than a year, then we would like to send the funds to the Near Foundation. Now, what would be even better, for example, is what if we could send the funds to a validator? So we can say, well, if the Marma J tokens sit here for a long time, we want to swap all the Marma J to Near, and then keep the Near in the DAO, and then maybe swap the Near to ST Near, to staking Near, for example, so that no matter what happens, we're supporting the network security. Because arguably the idea is, as long as we're supporting the entire Near community and Near continues to survive, we are doing our purpose of first of all, the Marma J Foundation is doing this process of being support towards a large number of people, but the DAO is doing its job of supporting, of managing the assets of the foundation. So I mean, that's all I really want to say in this video is, that's the first half of the paper. I'm going to flesh out the rest of the paper, talking about the Marma J DAO, what we currently have, and then, the future. Like, what are the plans for what we're going to do, moving forward? For a lot of that, it's mainly about like being more efficient with our tracking, in my opinion. So for example, trying to measure the impact that we are having with what we're doing. I don't want to expand. I don't want to say, oh, we're going in this direction or that direction, as like an authoritative leader. The idea is to just be more efficient with telling the story of the work we're doing. We've had some pretty interesting experimental outcomes, I guess, as well, purposes and outcomes. So we've had some artists from around the world submit proposals to get work done. We've paid them out to the DAO. We have 2 young women in the Philippines who are playing Axie Infinity, for example, and speaking to them and hearing how their lives have been changed just from understanding that they have support by playing this Web3 game. The idea is the Marma J DAO should also be able to submit cross-chain transactions through Aurora, using Aurora, to then manage assets on Ronin as well. So these are kind of really cool abstract ideas, is where it shouldn't be just for example, one of the ideas, the future is not just the Near community, but the entire Web3. And so the idea here is that, supporting the entire Near network is amazing, and it's awesome. It's a really, it's a large network now of a lot of people doing a lot of cool things. But there's always going to be different blockchains, different protocols, different, for different people, for different communities that suit different people better. So for example, Layer 1 Ethereum will suit certain projects, communities best, because of the security it offers, because of the, for example, no downtime. So a couple days ago, Solana went down for 20 hours. Arbitrum, Layer 2 solution on Ethereum, went down for a few hours. So the idea is there's certain communities that they cannot build on top of a system that might go down even for a few seconds, right? So Ethereum layer one might be the best solution there. And so, there's definitely we would definitely want to be able to manage layer one Ethereum assets from the Marma DAO as well. Now, there's going to be other people that are never going to be able to afford layer one Ethereum realistically, or it's not going to be efficient to do so. For the Marma Foundation has assets on Polygon. We have assets on Ronin sidechain for Axie Infinity. We have assets on a tiny bit of assets on Solana. We have like four Solana staking, and the idea eventually would be able to provide support not only for the Near ecosystem, but for all the ecosystems that the Near ecosystem is connected to, and to provide a template or an outline for how to evaluate that, to how to efficiently expand upon. So if someone has a DAO on Polygon, there's many DAOs. I think DAO House has a wonderful DAO factory on Polygon. But maybe someone then wants to try and interact with their Near community that way, or support the Near community in some way. So the idea would, again, moving into, and then, so I guess the idea here in general is then moving into DAO to DAO interactions support. So again, the idea becoming, so I think, again, one-to-one interactions are great. One-to-many, obviously a little more efficient. And then now, with the speed at which information travels and the efficiency at which we can process information, I think many-to-many interactions are pretty cool. So for example, the Marma DAO has pledged to Meta Gamma Delta, and we pledged as a DAO instead of pledging individually, because the idea is, I believe that it would be really cool if DAOs were sitting on accounts of other DAOs, investing in other DAOs, and figuring out how to support other DAOs. I mean, it's just like communities supporting other communities, but the idea is usually if you have a community of 10,000 people and a community of 10,000 people, it's not very efficient to find ways to come to consensus as those two communities on how to support each other. But the idea that DAOs kind of try and boil down large communities into making decisions on topics very quick, efficiently at least, because it does boil down to like a yes or a no, usually a binary, or usually you come down to a binary decision. Now, I think I'd love to, also expand on what does it look like to not have a binary decision when it comes to consensus between DAOs. But for a very basic next step, it would be, can we use the Marma J Foundation to not just support the unique members or individuals within our community, and even the unique members of other communities, but also how do we just support entire other communities that are already established as DAOs? And that's about it. I will continue this video probably tomorrow, the next day or something like that. Hopefully this was helpful in expanding upon what I was talking about yesterday, and going to school and why I wanted to go to school. So I'll finish the paper tomorrow. I'll get it up on the blog, and then I'll go through what this other kind of stuff is. But I kind of feel like I already went through most of it. But yeah, hope you're having a good night. I'm gonna go eat dinner and then do the and then do the interview with AVB. So again, have a good night. Toodles all.